successful is because they continue to reinvent themselves when necessary, and they've won tons of awards. For example, one up there in the industry, and technology, and innovation. Because as you know, as we talk about every week, about how things change so fast. I mean, we're talking about Facebook and some marketing and the social media tools this week, social, mobile, and local marketing.
Yeah.
When I was in school, Facebook, I mean, that whole chapter in the text is dedicated to Facebook.
Wow.
I mean, that's so telling.
Yeah.
I mean, a whole chapter is dedicated to this.
Yeah.
So that's how fast things change. Anyway.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jeannie. Really appreciate it. Really excited to be here. I know you guys can relax. I won't ask you any tough questions. You know, we'll just, so what would be really helpful, because I'd like to share my knowledge and experience. Maybe if you guys just want to say one or two things that, let me start by introducing myself. My name is Manish Chowdhary. I'm the founder and CEO of GoECart. We are a leading e-commerce retail software company. So we help mostly small, mid-sized retailers set up their online storefronts and manage them, and also their back office operations. So it's a cloud-based software that is used by hundreds of clients. Some of the popular names that you might recognize, and then majority of our clients are mid-market or smaller emerging companies that are established, but they're not quite the household names. However, we have a few of those as well. And why I'm qualified to speak a little bit about this is I've been involved in the e-commerce space since 1998. I was involved with one of the first turnkey e-commerce solutions on the planet. You know, back in '98, there were really Yahoo. If you're familiar, I don't know how much you guys know about the e-commerce software space. Basically, in simple words, it's a shopping cart, more commonly known as, but it's a lot more involved today than besides a shopping cart. So back in the day in '98, Yahoo was one of the first turnkey e-commerce platforms out there, and there was another one called Monster Commerce that became incredibly popular. So I was part of that team. We helped build that software, and that became hugely popular, perhaps more popular than most of the solutions you might be familiar with. So I go that far back, from early days of e-commerce software till now, which is now e-commerce is a huge industry, as you know, approaching about 10% of retail in 2016. So 10% of all retail transactions expected B2C being conducted online. That's 1 out of 10. That's huge, because this industry didn't exist until almost 1995 when Amazon, set up their online store. So with that said, what would help me a lot is if you one or two things that you'd like to learn very quickly. So I want to make sure I cover those in addition to whatever material Jeannie wants me to cover.
All right. I'm sorry, I blanked out the first one. Just the
sure.
content I'm hoping to learn.
Yeah. What would you like me to share from your perspective?
Just exactly like how does technology work in terms of digital shopping cart.
Okay.
And how it can translate, as well as potential opportunity to understand more about the data and the conversion for future marketing.
Okay. Excellent.
Hi, I'm Shana.
Hi.
I think it's great what you do for other companies, but how did this actually get started from kind of like, from your college dorm room to what it is today? Like, what do you think was, because we're part of our project is developing an e-commerce site, so just some helpful hints or anything you have to, going about it.
Excellent, thank you.
Hi, Nikki. I used to intern in a small company, and the CEO also started his business from his dorm. So I'm kind of wondering how you started to think about this business idea, and through probably how long time, and what kind of your most valuable story to share during this period of time you build up your company till now.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Hi, Jimmy.
Hi.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, you started a company in a dorm, and actually every company suffer from its very beginning from its start. So I'm very interested in your story, how you grow your company from nothing to now, for very, very early stage? How do you like survive through that stage?
Awesome. Thank you.
And Jesse, I mean, I just like to learn more about the company itself, like what the business strategy is, and what the business model is, and all that kind of stuff, and also your story as to how you actually grew the company.
Great, great, excellent. Is there a whiteboard, or if you don't want to? So I know that Jeannie wants me to cover some technology stuff. I think you're interested in technology. What's needed for e-commerce? We'll cover some of that. I'll cover my story, and I'll make it contextual with the technology space. So one of the things that, from a technology standpoint, what's needed to create an e-commerce presence is that, in essence. So e-commerce, first and foremost, in order to set up an e-commerce, and I'm going to talk more in context of retail. E-commerce comes in various flavors, from content and selling virtual goods online, to selling content, to subscription, to travel and others. So I'm going to focus more on physical goods. So things like what Amazon does. That's what we help at GoECart with retailers. So in order to set up an e-commerce store, first of all, what are you going to call this store? Just what name would you want to call it? The first thing that you need to do is to first come up with a name, right?
True.
So what name would you like to give it? Let's create a fictitious store.
ABC123.
ABC123, great. So do we need a domain name?
No.
We would need a domain name, right? That's number one. Because first you need to come up with a name, then we need a domain name. Let's go register the domain name. So we need, oops, okay. All right, so here, domain name. So where are we going to go register this domain name? Any idea? GoDaddy, perfect. That's perfect. Okay, GoDaddy. That's our. We can go to GoDaddy, register.com. We can go to Network Solutions, web.com. So that's the number one thing that we need. Now we have a domain name. So what would you like to sell on this website? Anyone? Please help her out. Let's make it a collaborative venture. How about that?
I will sell subscription boxes.
Which
Subscription boxes.
What are these subscription boxes?
Subscription boxes for snacks, like healthy snacks.
So you want to sell snacks online? All right, let's call it snacks. So product, we need a product. So once we have this, we need to source. Now you're gonna. So are you planning to fulfill these goods from your basement, or are you gonna? What kind of? Are we gonna keep inventory for this item that you're gonna? Once you start getting orders, what are we gonna do about that?
I will keep the inventory in my dorm room.
All right, perfect, perfect. So we're gonna come back to that. So we're gonna sell snacks on ABC. What was our name?
123.
123.
Yes.
Okay, abc123.com, and assuming that it's available on GoDaddy, we've registered the domain name, we've come up with what we're going to sell on abc123.com, and we've got products. So would you like to get paid for this item, or are we going to distribute it for free?
I paid.
We're going to pay, right? So you do want to collect money?
I want profit, yes.
You want profit. That's great. That's a good idea. So that actually, we were thinking about this at GoECart when we started the company, that we will make a profit. So that's why we are here. So we need payment, right? We need to collect payment. That's important. On abc123.com, we're going to sell snacks, and then we're going to make some money, and we're going to have that money deposited into, are you going to put it in your checking account, savings account?
The company's
Yeah. Money has to be deposited somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So do you have a business checking account? Maybe we'll need a business checking account, right? So we'll need a bank account, number one, right? Without a bank account, money will not stay. So a good idea is to create a bank account. But in order to now, all right, so now we're going to sell snacks on abc123.com. You have a bank account. Now we need software, right? In order to sell all this, create a website. So do you have technology experience? Can you build a website on your own?
No.
Okay, so that plays a huge role in how you select an e-commerce software. So you don't have technology experience, so you would be more comfortable going to somebody else, like a company that provides this as a service. Would you, so we have a choice now, a software selection, right? Software selection process. Now this is very complex, and that's part of your course material too. So how are we going to decide which software to buy? And there are three considerations. In order to decide this, so when you make a software, an e-commerce software, you have to think about three things. How are you going to buy and pay for the software? How are you going to build it? And how are you going to manage and operate it? So the question is, do you want to put a lump sum money up front, one time, and then own the software? You know, that is buy or rent, you know, which is either owning the software, or sometimes we have something called free, which, anybody heard of free software? Open source software? Like perhaps in the e-commerce world, there's a company called Magento. Have you heard of it? Or WordPress? Anybody? Yeah. WordPress is free, right? You can go to their website, you can download the software for free. If you have a server in your dorm room, you could host it for free as long as you get a domain name. So this is an important consideration. So you have to decide, in order to make the software selection, you can go with free, and I'll come back to it. There's nothing free. If the software was free, companies like us would never exist, you know. So that's open source. What's your preference? I forgot your name.
Millie.
Millie. What's your preference? Would you like to pay a lot of money or some money one time and own that piece of software, or would you like to pay a monthly subscription fee, small monthly subscription fee each month, or would you prefer owning the software and pay, say, $5,000 all at once? What does your cash flow permit?
Probably small payment.
Small payment. I like that because that's what we do at GoECart. We are in the subscription business. So you would prefer to rent the software, right? Now, so we have several options. So we'll come back to this, and it's SaaS, which is software as a service, is one option. Now, how are we going to build it? In order to build this e-commerce website, you'll need, would you like to have a logo, graphic design? Would you like it to represent your brand?
No.
So you'll need a logo. What else would she need if she wants to build a website that should look really cool, can sell some really cool, healthy snacks? What should this website have in addition to logo? We just have a logo right now and a name.
Design.
Design, yeah. That's a good idea. Maybe we should design this site. What else? What else should we have on this site?
Pictures of items.
Pictures of items, perfect. Yeah, without pictures, I don't think anybody would be able to visualize how healthy those snacks are. So images. What else?
Navigation bar.
Navigation. So that'll be part of design. Navigation. So, and then in order to build this, would you have to now connect it to this bank account somehow, right? We would need to connect it so you get paid on the website, right? What else? Are people concerned about putting their credit cards online? So do we need to think, should we think about security or not really?
Yeah.
Were you one of the guys whose card was at Target? No? Okay. But you know about the Target breach?
Yeah.
Did you guys get letters in the mail?
Well, I didn't shop.
Okay, good. But online, that's a huge concern, security, right? So we need to think about security. What else? Anything else in order to build this e-commerce website that we should be worried about, that should be thinking about? Customer database, okay. We need customer database, okay. But looks like for the most part you've got the design, the logo, product images, and payments, kind of the building blocks of e-commerce. And then perhaps maybe an email account might help, right, if you want to communicate with customers. So CRM, some kind of a customer relationship, which falls in this category.
How about fulfillment?
Yeah. So once we get the order, we should talk about fulfillment. So, Millie, do you have the expertise to do all this? Like, can you design the logo? Can you design the wireframe of the website? Can you create high-quality images, make sure it's all going to be secure, and have all the CRM? Can you build it? That's the question. You cannot build it. Some other folks here, anybody more in the technology space that can build the site on their own? Okay, well, that's a consideration, right? Because not all online retailers are that technical. So if you were super technical, you could potentially build this. You could get free software. You had an engineering background. You've done it before. In that case, you could potentially build it. But in this case, you are going to, we are going to outsource this. You're going to outsource this building of this thing. And that's an important consideration because first we started with how we're going to pay for it. You know, if you have a lot of money, you can buy enterprise software, pay it once, own the software. Or if you want to, that's more capital expense. You know, when you're capitalizing and putting up a lot of money, or you want it to come out of your daily cash flow, then you're renting the software, which is companies like GoECart provide software as a service, so small fee, you pay each month, and you're able to rent the software. You don't own it, you pay for the utility of the software. It's very similar to your Netflix model, where you don't quite own the DVDs that come in the mail. You simply pay for the service for usage of that, which is what a company like GoECart does, or you can go with an open source. Then you have to choose whether you're going to build it. That means, do you have all the expertise needed to do it yourself, or you want to hire a group of programmers, designers, and all these other people that can work under your supervision, under your premises, and build this for you if you don't have that expertise. Or you can hire a firm that will do this for you. That means they can design the website, they can take high resolution images, put it up on the site, and then security. And then the question is how to manage and operate. Once again, even if you got the free software, you got it, you build it. Millie, would you like to, do you have ability to put servers in your dorm room? Do you have high bandwidth connection that you can house the server in the dorm room?
No, when I use cloud.
So that's a consideration. I mean, if you had high bandwidth connection, you have a raised floor above the ground, like a feet, because if the water spills, it won't go into your server. Or how are you going to do backup? You know, if you were to host it in your dorm room, you have to think about backup, redundancy. Unless you have huge generators in your dorm room connected to your room facility. I mean, those are considerations that you have to think about managing and operating, because that is a choice that you have to make, whether to, even if you got all this, you rented a software, will you want to put it on your hardware, your infrastructure, or you're going to outsource that piece as well. And that's an important consideration. Cloud is one option, or you can do it on-premise, which is the delivery model. You know, whether these are two delivery models. And there's a third model called ASP, which is basically you buy the software, you get someone to build it, then you rent some space, but you're putting your bought software on rented infrastructure. That's the ASP model. You still own the software. Or more recently, emerging companies like GoECart, what we've done is basically you rent the software, which comes with the infrastructure built into the cloud, and all you have to do is operate your store. You don't have the overhead of managing the infrastructure, uptime, backup, security, redundancy. So that's one kind of solution, which is what you might be familiar, like a Gmail. All you do is you use the service. You don't worry about upgrades. You don't worry about any kind of security. That is all the responsibility of the provider. Whereas if you buy the software, then and you create your own infrastructure, now you're responsible for making sure that your hardware is always up to date. If Windows releases new updates and security patches, you have to take the responsibility of upgrading that, making sure your firewalls are well set, and so on. So those are all the considerations that you must take into account when you're making your software selection. Is this helpful?
Absolutely.
Are you guys with me?
This should all sound familiar to you guys, right? We covered this, so this
Right.
is good real world application.
Repeated content or something new. So those are all the considerations that go into a software selection, a high level. Once you that's more of the basic consideration. Then you go after feature and functionality, right? So, Millie, you're going to sell snacks. Are you going to sell? How are you going to ship it? Are you going to have your own trucks? No? U.S. Postal Service. That's good. So that's perfect. So you're going to use USPS. Are you going to go stand in line every evening after school and take your boxes up there, or how you plan to optimize this process? Pick up. Okay. Would you need an account with them to make sure your packages are labeled and ready to be handed over to the mailman that comes in? So it's a very quick operation. So you should consider getting an account with USPS. And there's a company called Indicia or Stamps.com. Have you heard of them? They will help you. So even before the mailman shows up, you can have everything ready. Your shipping labels are ready, pre-affixed to the package, and the USPS mailman just comes and picks it up. You don't have to worry about, so you're gonna. Would you like to? How would you like these people to pay on your website? Using credit card, or how should people be able to pay on your website on abc123.com? Any form of payment? Which payment do you use generally when you shop online? Credit cards. Okay, so you will need a way to hook up your credit card. So that's why you need, in that case, in order to hook up a credit card, what you need is a merchant account. Have you heard of this? A merchant account.
Merchant bank. We looked at the transaction, what happens when you place
Yeah.
an order, and it goes through the credit card of the customer, and then
Yeah.
the merchant bank, and then we talked about it.
Yeah. So you'll need a merchant account because that's the company that's underwriting, so that when you charge me $10, it is going to go to merchant account, who in turn will deposit the money into a bank account. So any company that you're familiar with that you can get a merchant account with? Any provider that you guys are aware of? PayPal, have you heard of PayPal? PayPal is a product that can give you a merchant account, and there's also one other small detail which is called payment gateway. So combined, PayPal gives you both of these. PayPal is a good option, I think. And then there are a number of other options like CyberSource. There's also other tools like if you were selling expensive stuff like furniture that you want people to take advantage of financing, there's a solution called Bill Me Later, which is very effective. I don't know if you're familiar with that. That's also
part of PayPal, right?
it's part of PayPal now. And so you can finance. There's also additional options like layaway, which is when people are saving for a certain purchase. There's a company called eLayaway that will help. And on the merchant account side, you've got companies like First Data, CyberSource. These are big companies. Bank of America, Chase Payment Tech. Chase Bank does that. So now that we have snacks to sell on abc123.com. We have a PayPal account. We have decided how we're going to build it, and then we're going to look at feature and functionality, and then you decided you're going to use USPS to ship the goods. Now that the order has arrived, now you said you're going to do your inventory, right? You're going to keep the inventory in your dorm room. Are you going to manufacture these products, or are you going to buy them? Purchase them, right? Like, gonna get it from Kraft, perhaps? Kraft has any healthy snacks? Or some other bigger manufacturer, right? So, how are you gonna source these items? Are these items gonna come from China or elsewhere? Healthy snacks, you have to think about, if you're not going to manufacture them, you need to source these items from somewhere.
Just because, based on this example, it seems so hard to have a presence for a business for a product, like a physical product is better or you just market bigger and more of a higher for services that doesn't require any hard product?
Well, I mean,
does it differ?
Well, it really depends, because there's physical goods are consumed more often, because there's a lot of moving parts. It's harder to manage this. However, wherever there are barriers to entry is low, the competition is generally higher. So if you were trying to sell some electronic e-books or what have you, most of those electronic kind of products, informational products, they generally go straight from source. And I don't know if you guys follow, what's been happening is Amazon and Apple through the iTunes have completely gotten rid of all the middlemen. They take the content straight from the producer and deliver it straight to the consumer without a lot of intermediaries. You don't need a lot of intermediaries, and that's why there's not a lot of room, unless you have a very unique product that you're producing on your own. The opportunity for being a retailer, an intermediary for an electronic good, is a very hard thing, and in fact there's no value addition, right? So you have to think about sourcing. That's an important consideration, because now if you're going to keep your inventory, you need to think about sourcing. And that's where you can go to sites like Alibaba. Familiar with Alibaba.com? So what you want is you want to have enough number of vendors. There's a website called wholesale.com, because you want to buy in wholesale, right? You want to make some profit. So if you buy for $5, you'll be able to sell it for 8, 9, 10. So you need sourcing, and there are tons of other similar sourcing websites out there that you wanna, or you make your own connections, direct manufacturer, distributors. So now that you have domain name, you've got your products, you've hired a company to design logo, design, and all that. You've chosen to pay as you go. SaaS is a pay-as-you-go model, meaning you, instead of buying, like say GoECart software, if you were to sell it one-off, that's cost $250,000 or more, possibly. But because we're able to provide the SaaS subscription service, you could get started with as low as $1,000 a month. That's on GoECart. However, the price point has come down significantly. There are so many, you probably don't need the complexity that GoECart has. You can get something really simple, and there are solutions out there like, have you heard of Shopify? So Shopify is a very easy to use, simple. We don't quite directly compete with them, but you could get started with something as little as, I think, about $19.95 a month. And they can hook you up with a SaaS-based software, and easy to use. They've got pre-designed design templates, and you just drop your logo, pick a color scheme, and put your products in through the admin web-based control panel, and determine your pricing. And they have built-in integration, so does GoECart, with all the carriers like USPS, and you get your payment. And one more thing, how are you going to secure this website? What will you need to prove to others that this website is secure?
Some sort of encryption.
Encryption is a good idea. So you need what we call an SSL certificate. That's the lock that you see on certain sites when you go certain pages. Certificates, and you can get it from which company? Any popular logos that you've seen regarding security? Have you heard of VeriSign? Have you seen GeoTrust? Or even Norton? So that's the one that needs to be installed on your domain name. That's specific to your domain, and that does encryption, because the whole concept of SSL security is, the data has to be encrypted between your computer all the way to the server, and that's why you need SSL. Have you heard of something called HackerSafe or McAfee Secure? Have you seen that logo on a certain website? It's called McAfee Secure. It's like McAfee logo. So that's an additional layer of protection that you can display to the consumers to boost their confidence that not only are your snacks healthy, their credit card is going to remain safe as well. Not just their belly, but also the credit cards. And that's an additional layer of confidence. These are called third-party seals. Another good idea would be, would you like to, are you planning to take good care of your customers, Millie? Or are you, once you take their money, you're going to forget about them? Or
no, I want new subscriptions.
You want new subscriptions, right? So you'll take really good care of them, right? So have you heard of Better Business Bureau, I'm sure? BBB?
Yeah.
So if you take good care of your customers, you'll have a good rating at BBB. Now those are confidence marks or trust marks. That might be another good thing to add to your website. And would you like your customers to talk about you on the website, on the web, give you reviews so that other customers can be attracted to your website?
Jenny has a question.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yes, along that line,
Yeah.
where do we put the social media?
Yes, okay, social media is a great, so we were just going into that.
Yes.
Yes,
exactly.
perfect. So,
Segue.
as we go through this, so now we're talking about marketing, promotions, customer retention, and I was talking so much about the technology stack because we covered all the layers of technology. And so would you like people to talk about their experience on your website in terms of, what kind of service you offered? So now we're talking about ratings and reviews, or we're going to talk about customer these are the voice of the customer. That's the way I'd like to think in terms of overall picture. And you can get that in multiple ways. We can get people to rate the transactions after purchase, and those are generally called product reviews. You might be familiar with if you buy something from Amazon, do they send you an email saying, hey, rate the item, rate the transaction? Product reviews. Would you like people to share that item with their friends if they like something that they had a good experience with? Say they found something that they liked on your site, would you like them to share?
Yes.
So good, that's a good idea. So those are social sharing. And what tools can you use for that? Have you heard of a tool called sharethis.com? Share this. And add this. These are tools. Product reviews. Platforms like GoECart come built in with product review capabilities, but there are also third-party tools out there that you can use. It's called Power Reviews, Bazaar Reviews, and things like reseller ratings. And many websites, once you make a purchase, at the very end they ask you to take a survey. Have you noticed that? when you buy something online, they'll ask you, and you might have, most likely that's a company called BizRate. So now that you made a purchase, what if you didn't make a purchase, and would you like someone to like that item? That's a Facebook concept, and that's where, you know, Facebook comes into play. Facebook, Twitter, social media. So for example, you like something, that's the easiest way to share, because with the Facebook like, it will immediately show up on your friend's wall. Pinterest is becoming very, very popular. In fact, Pinterest is actually, believe it or not, is the highest converting social network for e-commerce, much higher than Facebook and Twitter combined. Pinterest is money. So start pinning, because Pinterest has recently introduced new features that not only allow you to look at pictures and collages, but also product pricing and availability right on Pinterest boards. And that's a new functionality called Pinterest Rich Pin, which Pinterest is making a big push for. And Twitter is really good when you have things like flash sale, right? When you want to track if an item, Millie, if you had a lot of people that really liked your brand, and you made a spot decision that, you know, you're going to do a 4-hour special sale, how are we going to get to them? Yeah, social media and Twitter. You could just tweet that item. So use a hashtag super sale Millie, and you are, people who are following your brand can immediately get that notification in a non-intrusive way. You know that email is becoming very hard to reach now. Are you guys aware? Like,
actually, in the text, it tells us that it's the #1 way to convert to sales.
Yes.
At this point, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean these other things are emerging enough.
yeah. So that is still the ROI from email marketing for e-commerce is the highest marketing ROI, but the world is changing, and it changed last year. Anybody knows why? There's a movement, there's a trend that's happening in email. Gmail did something. Yes, exactly. Yeah, Gmail has now promo tabs. So when Lily sends those great super saving emails and her blasts, it doesn't show up in your inbox. So what's happening is the open rate and the click-through rate from email marketing has gone down significantly, and it's trending downwards, which is why social is going to play a much bigger role. And another big change that's happening, I mean, how are you going to drive traffic to this website? Marketing. Organic SEO, maybe you want to rank high, don't want to pay a lot, maybe you want to do hard work, get the site ranked high on Google. Right? Yeah. So SEO is another big component from a marketing standpoint. And we covered social. Would you like to cover more, Jeannie, on the social side, or
No, we talked a lot about Instagram as well.
Yeah.
As an emerging medium. I mean, Pinterest it's very interesting what you're saying. It's just that Pinterest probably doesn't have as much density right now, right? It's smaller in terms of Facebook has a bigger population, Twitter has a bigger population, so it's
yes. So what's different between Facebook? Facebook is great for conversation and brand building. So if you want to talk about creating a community, it's more for engaging people into your brand. But generally speaking, what we find that the retailers are not getting as much click-through traffic from there. And if you try to sell on Facebook, it doesn't quite work just as well. And it's more meant for creating a brand, building the awareness. Whereas Pinterest users are more in a buying mode, whereas Facebook users are kind of hanging out. So it's a great place to target them. However, you got to balance them out. And Twitter is more suitable for any kind of event-based marketing as opposed to general. And Instagram, I think I just read today that their Instagram user base is approaching to be close to Twitter. I don't know if you knew that. Just today, a study came out. The number of users on Instagram are approaching to be close to the number of users in Twitter. That's a huge number.
That's huge.
That's a huge number.
Because they are working right now on a creative suite for their part of their e-commerce marketing plan, for e-commerce business plan. So they're focusing right now on that. So they have to decide which one makes the most sense
Yeah.
in the marketing plan.
And Pinterest, because a lot of people, a lot of retailers are not, a lot of users are not fully aware, huge opportunity to get on early and take advantage of that. And the intent of the users on Pinterest is more, they're in the buying mode because they are collecting items, they're trying to look at stuff, as opposed to a conversational of friends that's happening on Facebook. So the Pinterest is actually 4 times more effective in terms of e-commerce ROI for social than Facebook or Twitter. In fact, it drives more traffic to retailers' websites. And this is, we're talking about retail here. We're not talking about other publication or any kind of news site or those kind of stuff. So this is very, very e-commerce centric. I'll take a pause and ask them, how you're doing in terms of time and questions. And is this helpful? I mean, if I can go into any area that you want further, but maybe a few questions, and then I definitely want to share my story that you guys asked for, but I wanted to save that for the end.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
absolutely.
Are you guys okay with that?
We'll let her ask one, and then it's your turn.
So, I know you said that Shopify is not really your competition. I would like to understand why, because from my perspective, looking in as a consumer, it's, they're a platform that hosts e-commerce.
Right.
Is it because they target a different audience than you guys
Yeah.
do, or because they don't target retailers?
Yeah, so can I erase some of this, maybe?
Sure.
All right, so,
I took all the notes.
cool, thank you. So, this is a simple scenario, right? When you have a very simple, where Millie wants to get started in her dorm room and start selling healthy snacks. And let's see, once business grows, once Millie's doing, say, a couple $1 million in sales, she's going to have growing pains. And that's one of my story as well. So as you get bigger, let's say, we'll take an example of a brand. So I'll use a live example of one of our clients. This client is called Norman Camera. I think they were founded in about 1957. They're located in Kalamazoo, Michigan, about 3 hours from Chicago. So they are a 3rd generation family-owned business. They have 2 retail stores. They sell cameras and photography equipment. That's what their business is, camera and photo equipment. 2 retail stores, both in Michigan. One in Grand Rapids, one in Kalamazoo. Where do people go to buy camera equipment these days? If you think about buying camera, what's your first place if you were to buy online? Where do you start your search? Okay, so you got 2 stores, and so do their customers. They go to Amazon. And any other website like Amazon? Have you heard of eBay? You think people buy stuff on eBay? Buy.com, Best Buy. Buy.com, which was recently acquired by a Japanese company called Rakuten. And Best Buy, for example. Sears, maybe. These are all what we call marketplaces. This is a new breed of websites that sell other people's stuff. So did you know that Amazon sells more stuff from other retailers than themselves? Amazon is very smart because they figured if I don't have to house the inventory and we make the same amount of money simply taking orders on behalf of Norman Camera, and I can make 20% commission on selling Norman Camera stuff, and we have such huge traffic on our website, 100 million plus unique visitors. So it makes sense to create a marketplace and let all these other people sell their stuff on my website and make it the earth's largest selection. That's how you make the earth's largest selection, by not trying to put everything in your warehouse. So they've got 2 retail stores, Amazon, eBay, Buy.com, Best Buy, Sears, all these different marketplaces. When you search for camera on Google, you see pictures at the top of products, and on the side you see shopping, Google Shopping. Are you familiar with Google Shopping? So that's these are what we call comparison shopping engines, CSE. That's the term, comparison shopping engines. Have you heard of Nextag, Price Grabber, any of these? Shopping.com, Shopzilla. This is where you go and compare prices when you want to. Now, mobile. Do you think people are shopping on mobile sites? So having a good mobile experience is important. Now, they have been in business since 1957. They've got 2 stores that they sell from in store, but they also use these 2 stores for fulfillment. And they have a point of sale. You know, the terminal that you walk up to with the barcode scanner and swipe card machine and everything else. So they've got 2 such stores in the front where people can come, scan the barcode, check out, and they also ship these items from both these locations throughout the world. And they also have to put the same items on Amazon, eBay, Buy.com, and also get these same items to be listed high on Google Shopping, Nextag, and they have to deliver a great mobile experience. And they're thinking about, you know, when they have some items that go on sale, like clearance, or anything that's nicked and sort of lightly used. They don't want to sell that on their main website, so they don't want to damage that brand. So they may consider creating a second online store just for clearance. It's a bit like you know, Filene's Basement compared to Filene's, or you know, back in the JCPenney, or so it's basically you're separating your primary brand from. So it's called multi-site. So now you're trying to. Now this is where the complexity comes in. Just imagine trying to run all these things, and you know, when you have that great camera equipment that might be extremely expensive, say $5,000, you may have only 2 of those in stock because you don't sell a lot of, but you want to make your inventory and your products available across all these channels. Just imagine that's the omni-channel problem. You know, how do you allow customers to buy and be serviced across any channel of their choice on any medium? You know, wouldn't it be nice if customer could go online, look up the inventory in the Kalamazoo store, and decide to place the order online, but say, I want to have it picked, I'll pick it up in the store, as opposed to you shipping it to me via UPS. Or they pick it up in store, they travel elsewhere, they decide to return it, they're in New York, do I now have to go back to Kalamazoo, Michigan to return it, or can I mail it to you? And then they call the call center. You know, when you sell this kind of stuff, equipment, most people have questions, right? I mean, photo equipment is very complex, so So you have all are these various channels, and now that's why the problem gets extremely complex in order to fulfill the demands of today's highly empowered consumers that want to shop across all these different channels at their preference and be able to buy and return things anywhere they like. And you have limited inventory because as a retailer you don't want to carry a lot of stuff, because inventory that doesn't sell is a problem, is a huge problem, because you're going to take a loss at it. You're actually paying for housing that inventory, the insurance, the real estate that you're using, and if it doesn't sell, it goes out of style very quickly, because Canon is going to release the next model very soon, and if that product doesn't sell, you're going to have to sell it at a very high discount, and you might not even recover your money. And that's what GoECart does, what Shopify does not. When you have this level of complexity, and you're a small, mid-sized retailer, you have your hands full. You cannot possibly manage, if you had 2 units of that camera, SLR, Canon, digital camera that cost $8,000, you want to make that item available simultaneously across all these channels, but as soon as you get the order for one, you want to be able to let all the channels know immediately that you now have one less, so you don't oversell. Because when you oversell and you can't fulfill that order, customers have a bad experience, they don't like it. And that will show up in your negative reviews. And not just that, you're missing on the opportunity to sell across all these channels simultaneously if you don't have a great software. And that's the problem that GoECart solves with the GoECart 360 product, where Shopify was better designed for Millie when she was very small, when she was getting started. Not to mention that Shopify does have some larger customers. However, the problem of multi-channel, omni-channel is a big one. And that's what GoECart system does, what's very different.
So can they integrate, if someone starts on Shopify, can they, without making the investment in, I'm assuming it's a lot larger investment for GoECart?
Yeah. Yeah, so.
How do they make that transition?
Yeah, so once merchants reach a certain size, they quickly come to realization that they need something more sophisticated. And that's when they would make the transition to GoECart. They'll bring all their content over, and they'll pretty much be able to migrate that domain name over to GoECart. To the end customer, the end customer doesn't know the difference. They can't tell that the software has changed hands, but behind the scenes, all of a sudden, on the GoECart platform, you get tons of additional capability to manage all these channels. And I'm not saying that every retailer is going to have all the same channels. Some people may have more retail stores. Some people might only sell on Amazon. They may not have a multi-site, multi-store. They may not have a call center. Some people might do more on the call center. So there's every variation of that is possible. And that's where, as long as you're using at least 2 channels, then GoECart system is highly attractive. If your business is extremely simple and you don't have a lot of volume, then something as simple like Shopify or Yahoo Store. There's tons of options out there, Yahoo, 3D Cart, BigCommerce. This is where you start, because they are, these are Volusion. So they are good systems, but designed for a simpler operation. And we haven't even covered the back office, which is where all the inventory, pricing, and promotions. Has it happened to you when, say, if you check out a product online and then you go to their physical brick and mortar store and they can't accept the coupon that you found online? Has it happened to anyone? Or the price is different? Yeah. So.
Shana goes right for the judgment every time.
See, that's.
She goes on social media. She tells them about it. She is on point.
Yeah. So those are all the challenges that the omni-channel brings, because it's no longer acceptable to say that, sorry, that's a web-only deal. Those days are gone. Every channel has to play nicely with every other channel. And that's why it's so important to have a consistent experience across everything. orders, fulfillment. We only talked about, obviously Norman Camera also has a lot of products that don't sell a lot, so they don't carry them in their stock, so they have what they call drop ship relationships. Now, how are you going to manage an order that comes in from your customer has to be sent to a supplier for fulfillment, and managing that relationship, that transaction workflow all the way to ensure that there's no degradation in your fulfillment commitment time frame.
You guys know what dropship is?
You know what dropship means? So, say I'm, Millie's ABC123.com. She sells snacks, but she doesn't want to carry that inventory in her dorm room because there's not space, and she would prefer to get that order and say send it to somebody like you who has the inventory, and you are her supplier. So instead of she shipping the items directly to the customer, she simply instructs you to ship the items to the customer on her behalf. So customer thinks it's coming from her, however it's coming from you. So you're representing her brand, but you're doing the fulfillment. That's the dropship relationship. So it gets fairly complex. Just imagine an order that came from Amazon to the customer that has to be sold to dropship, and then finally you have to submit all the tracking information like the USPS so the customers can track the order. And it has to all happen without missing a beat, without missing the service level commitment. If you promise the customers the 2-day shipping, it better arrive in 2 days. And that's how complexity grows quite exponentially, and small retailers need a platform like GoECart. Does that answer your question, Jeannie?
Yes. Does anyone else have any questions? Thank you very much for that.
Cool. Maybe 2 minutes. I know a lot of people had asked me about the story, which I didn't want to.
Story. You have
Yeah.
to talk about the story. Unless there's any other questions. No?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think you said, what are the challenges between then and now, and what? So GoECart product was born. We were first a service company. We were building e-commerce software for other companies. And what we realized that my passion was about building innovation. It's really hard to innovate, or it's a different kind of innovation in the service industry, because you're always working to please the client. You're working to pretty much deliver on the specifications that they've given, as opposed to a vision for a product like an e-commerce software. And so when we saw it was a very crowded space, all those guys are extremely well funded, just so you guys know. I mean, they have a ton of money. I mean, Shopify just raised $100 million last year, late last year. BigCommerce raised $30 million. They have founder of AOL, Steve Case, is on their board. Yahoo, obviously you guys know, very big, popular. Volusion is also a company that raised a lot of money, $30 million in debt last year. So we had to find something. We had to find what we call a blue ocean. And 3 years ago, after doing a lot of research, we said, hey, how are we going to compete in that space? It's going to be easy. And that's how we looked at this challenge. And what customers were doing was they're trying to piecemeal a lot of different software to make this omni-channel, multi-channel work. Large enterprise, big companies like Amazon or say Gap or the Walmarts, and these people, they have a lot of technology know-how, they have the resources, they have the bandwidth to put it all together. But if you're a small mid-sized retailer like a Norman Camera, I mean, they're still a pretty large company in the tunes of tens of millions of dollars, but it's really hard for them to compete and trying to stay on top of technology and put all these pieces together. And when you have multiple software, if one software gets upgraded, it breaks the other software. It's a continuous problem. And that's how we said, we're going to build a suite that is going to unify all these different channels from one easy-to-use product. And that's how GoECart 360 was born about 2.5, 3 years ago. Prior to that, we were competing with those guys, and it was really hard to compete. And so it's one of the lessons is lesson learned is you have to find a very unique value proposition it is very hard to compete with established companies in your space without something that's unique. And so jumping in and trying to do what they're doing, unless you have incredible execution prowess, meaning you can do better in terms of executing than your competition, then you should try to compete with them. Otherwise, it'll be really hard to gain market share against somebody like that, because it grows in scale. Most of these people are what we call software as a service, subscription revenue. So the scale becomes so large that it becomes harder for less established competitor to compete. And that was a lesson learned, that we had to come up with a new way. We had to provide something that was so unique that we wouldn't ever be competing with those guys. We would be, even if we were competing, we would be competing against individual components of the software as opposed to the suite itself. So we were competing on philosophy that, hey, you're getting a unified product, as opposed to, if you're more interested in building and connecting these different software together and integrating them, then you're better off going elsewhere. And that is what has worked for us really well. What else? Any specific questions?
They want to know how you got, like, what happened, how did the light bulb go off when you were in school? You were at University of Bridgeport, and all of a sudden one day you woke up and you're like, I'm going to build an e-commerce app. How did that all?
Oh, okay. So way back when. So there wasn't any light bulb, and it was, that's a hint, but it was really. So I went to the University of Bridgeport in Connecticut, and I was very, very fortunate to get a full scholarship. This was in '97 when I went to school there, '97 to 2000, and so I was very lucky. But there was a friend of mine who came from Romania, and he was lucky too, but perhaps not as lucky as I was. He got partial scholarship, So he had to make up for the remainder of that money somehow. And he was a foreign student, so he had to figure out how he's going to make the rest of the money. And this was in '98, '99. And so what he figured out was he was going to build these computers in the dorm room and assemble them and sell them on campus. And so somehow I got introduced to him, and what he was doing was he would collect an order from a friend and go to the computer fairs of the weekend, because to put together components of a assembled computer back then used to cost about $300 to $400. You had to get the processor, the motherboard, the hard drive, the chassis, and monitor, the cable, and all that. You had to get them piecemeal, go to the computer fair on Saturday, come back with the components later that afternoon, build that computer and sell it, collect that money. Now you have enough money to build the next computer. But you had to wait a week because the computer fairs were once a week.
Wow.
So I was lucky that I had full scholarship, and I was also working, and I had a really good job. So I was making money while I was going to school, and I had zero debt. So I said, you know what, I like what you're doing, but we need to scale this up. How can we do 10 of these a week as opposed to one? It's like, financing is a problem, because the computer fair guys don't give me credit, so I have to pay them money when I go there, and I only have enough money to buy one computer. So I said, all right, you know what, we're going to collaborate on this, and we're going to now go buy 10 computer parts, and we're going to have enough in stock that if we get an order during the week, we can build it and get it, sell it immediately rather than waiting for the next week's order. And that's how it got started. And we started getting more and more popular on campus, to the point that now a lot of these students, they wanted to, at the time of tax return, about this time, they're like, we start selling starting about fall, and then everything was fine. And then around April, people start coming to us and say, hey, we need a receipt. We need to write this off as a educational expense in our tax return. I'm like, receipt? We don't even have a company. How am I going to give you a receipt for the IRS? And that's that was sort of the aha moment, or the light bulb. It was like, oh, we got to go create a company so we can give these people receipt, and we have to now start paying sales tax to the state as well. And that's how actually technically the company was really born. And then once I graduated, they kicked me out of campus. Like, enough of the free stuff that you had for 4 years. You have to, have to make room for new people. So I found a place very close to campus, the closest apartment I could find to campus. We set up our shop there, and slowly we made the transition. I mean, computer hardware was assembling computers. This was back, in the Dell days. Those computers used to be, branded computers used to be expensive, and students couldn't afford them, or they didn't want to pay that kind of money. I mean, that has changed dramatically now. Now nobody thinks about building computers because you can buy something off the shelf so cheap, so inexpensive. But back in those days, that market existed. That's how we got started, and then we quickly realized that that was not sustainable at the scale we were doing it. So we started getting into software and custom software development, and we did services for a while. Then we were building sites for other people, and then we built an e-commerce platform that I told you about earlier. So we were the product development company for that product that became hugely popular. And then once our relationship ended, GoECart was born because we said we could do it better. So we had a lot of struggle because we didn't raise any venture capital, we didn't raise any outside funding. We tried to do it all organically in-house. And that was a very tough decision, meaning it was hard because in order to scale a business, software, or any other business today, you're up against a lot of competition, and you need to be able to move swiftly. You need to create a great product that requires a lot of investment. And so we struggled for a while, and then when we took a look at how we were going to compete, and that's when we came up with GoECart 360, and that was a turning point in our company. We had to do a pivot. We had to change our strategy, and so GoECart 360 came into existence about 3 years ago, and has been incredibly successful since.
Did you raise money for that, or did you?
No, we didn't.
That's a good thing, though. I mean, you
Yeah.
struggled through it, but now you don't
Yeah.
have anybody, no one else owns your company. And
Yeah, so that's a choice that you have to make, as an entrepreneur, what you want to do. I mean, I didn't have any experience doing that capital raise, so I didn't know any better. But once we had so much, battle scars along the way, that we figured that if we can build this product, based on the business that we had created, and we didn't want too much of distraction, so we went on stealth mode for about 18 months while we were servicing existing customers, building this new platform, and then we released it. So very lean startup, lean product development methodology, if you're familiar with that. Concept of minimum viable product, create the product, test it, get feedback, iterate, as opposed to make all kinds of assumptions up front and only to go to market to find out that those assumptions are no longer valid. So it's really all about iterations that we did. That's the way how we built the product, and we continue to do that even for adding additional features to the product. So that's, in short, kind of the story.
thank you so much. Do anybody else have any questions for Manish? We still have to finish. We have another 20 minutes of class. We have to go over a couple things.
Cool.
But thank you so much.
Well, thank you, guys. Thank you. I'll set at the back and let you guys wrap up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.